Welcome back. We are continuing our breaking news coverage of a blockbuster report coming out of Politico saying that it has obtained a 98-page opinion, draft opinion, from the United States Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade. Now, again, we have to provide a caveat here, which is that this doesn't mean it is necessarily the final ruling of the court. This is the first draft, likely, of this opinion, and opinions can change. Justices can be convinced. They can draw alliances. They can decide to concur on parts and dissent on other parts, etc. But, and let me bring in Harry Litman, who studies the Supreme Court. He's a former federal and state prosecutor. It would seem to me very unlikely that in a case of this magnitude, that somehow this alliance of the 5 most conservative justices on the court would somehow break up and that Roe v. Wade would somehow not be in peril. Harry, what do you make of it?
Dan, the bonds were formed and really formed in concrete right after the conference itself. You don't have 5 voting in this way. I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll see how it reads. This is the most consequential Supreme Court case in at least 70 years. It's one that they have spent their entire lives thinking about. There's almost no way that it somehow fails to hold, and the rationales have been well worked since 1970. It seems I can imagine Chief Justice Roberts as a 4th vote trying to temporize a bit, but this is almost certainly the basic Supreme Court opinion. Now, what makes it? I mean, it's already seismic and impossible to overstate the impact of it. But what's going to happen immediately now? Because among other things, this is a total gobsmacking event in the court's history that an opinion was leaked in this one. So they might respond to that. But I think go ahead.
Let me ask you about that, Harry. I mean, do you think that there's going to be, a major criminal investigation at this point as to how this got leaked?
There'll be a lot of sentiment to do it on the court, and in short, I think so. I mean, I clerked a couple years and we were cautioned repeatedly by the Chief Justice. This is the biggest case that could be. I see lie detectors. I see, clerks being isolated and the like, and it's professional ruin for the person who did it. Now, of course, I don't mean to minimize that at all. It's an unbelievable breach of court practice, but it also shows how deeply polarized and how at least somebody there really appreciated the stakes. It's an act of desperation and maybe suicidal desperation that they were willing to do it, and it obviously reflects the incredibly important substance of the opinion itself.
But I don't know which way it cuts, meaning I don't know if it's more likely that it was a conservative who wanted to make sure that none of the 5 dropped out, or it was a liberal who wanted to put pressure to get one of the 5 to join in a more compromised opinion. I don't know. Which of the two do you think is more likely as to the leak?
Almost certainly the latter, to shake things up, to have people, to have there be a sort of political freak out. No reason to think you need to shore up one of the 5, and it's so incredibly precarious thing to do. I think it's almost certainly someone who wants to upset the apple cart, and at this point the apple cart is on pretty firm ground. It's a lib.
Yeah, and you think so? All right. Well, look, I think it is shameful, whoever did it. I agree with you that I don't care what you think about what the opinion ought to be. It is not just a breach of protocol. I think it is bad for America that someone is leaking a draft opinion of the United States Supreme Court, and I hope that the person is
found. Which has never
happened.
Really never happened.
Nope, never happened.
This to be the first. All true,
and I hope
yet
the person's
tonight,
punished.
I'd say secondary to the opinion itself, but you can't gainsay what you're saying. Absolutely.
Yep, and All right, Harry Litman, thank you. Let me ask you to stick around because this is breaking news coverage. We appreciate it. We're coming back with more of the blockbuster report from Politico that the Supreme Court has decided to overturn Roe versus Wade in a draft opinion that has not yet been released. Come back with more coverage in a moment. Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.